Hello everyone, welcome back to the class. In the last lecture, we discussed a very important topic of coercion. And if you remember, we were talking about free consent. And even before that, the subject of our discussion is when does an agreement become a contract? And we know that in order for an agreement to become a contract, certain conditions are required to be fulfilled, correct? So agreement plus fulfillment of certain conditions is contract. All right. And those conditions, the first condition that we saw was competency of parties, meaning that the parties should be competent to enter into the agreement. Okay. And the second condition is free consent, and that is what we started our discussion on in the last class, and we saw coercion. So if I were to ask you what is the meaning of coercion, what would you say? Simple definition is coercion is basically when one party forces the other party to do something. Okay. But that force, only when it is exercised in a particular manner does it become coercion, which means that somebody is forcing the other party, one party is forcing the other party to do something, but that force needs to be exercised in a certain manner. Example, if I beat you continuously and then I give you a paper to sign, you will definitely sign because you're scared of further beating. Okay, so in this case, I forced you to sign a document by doing what? By beating you or by committing a crime, correct? So I forced you to do something by committing a crime. All right. So the force is exercised in this manner. Or in another example, let's say I force you to sign an agreement by telling you that if you don't sign this agreement, then I will kill you. Okay. And I have a gun with me. What will happen in this scenario? You will most likely sign the agreement, correct? So I forced you to sign the agreement. And how have I exercised the force? By threatening you. Okay. And threatening you with what? Threatening you with by telling you that I will kill you. So I have given a threat to commit a crime. So we saw two categories so far. One is by committing a crime, I can exercise force. Second, by making a threat to commit a crime, I have exercised force. And the third and the last category of coercion was unlawful detention. Let's say, we talked about this in the last class. I keep your phone with me. Okay, I keep your phone with me. And I tell you that if you don't sign this agreement, I will not give your phone back to you. Okay, so this is also coercion. I have illegally detained your property in order to force you. So if anybody asks you what is coercion, your simple response should be that coercion is when one party forces the other party to do something that party did not want to do, and there needs to be a manner of exercising that force, and that manner is, number one, by committing a crime, second, by threatening to commit a crime, and third, by unlawful detention. Today we are going to talk about another important concept, which is undue influence. Okay, now before we jump into the law, let us understand the meaning of the term influence. You also might be using the term influence in your everyday life. What does influence mean? If I tell you that somebody has tried to influence my mind, what does it mean? It means to change someone's mind. Okay, which means that if somebody tries to influence you, they are trying to change your mind. Okay, so remember the meaning of influence. Influence someone means to change their mind or to try to change their mind. Okay, but influence itself is not wrong. This is something that we know. Influence itself is not wrong. For example, let's say you don't have any motivation to study. All right, let's say you play games all day. I tell you one day, I tell you that look, if you don't study and don't clear CLAT, then you will go to a shitty law school and you will spend 5 miserable years there. And when it comes to job, you will not find a good job. First of all, you may not find a job at all. And even if you do, it will not be a good job and you will regret forever. Am I trying to influence your mind? The answer is yes. But is this influence problematic? Logically speaking, no, because I have tried to do here is to motivate you. Okay, so not all influence would be wrong, as we just saw, and that for the purpose of law of contracts, only one category of influence is problematic for the purpose of an formation of an agreement, which is undue influence. Now that we know what is influence, let us look at the definition of or meaning of undue. This is also a term that we keep using in our day-to-day parlance. Okay, what is the meaning of undue? Simple answer is it means improper, unfair, or wrong. All right, so now that you know the meaning of both undue and influence, now combine them. Undue influence. If I tell you there is undue influence, what would you mean by that? You would simply say that any influence which is improper or wrong, any influence which is improper or wrong is undue influence. All right. Now the question that may come to your mind is, when does influence become improper? How do we decide whether the influence is proper or improper? Okay, so the question would be this: when does influence become improper? To answer that, you need to understand one thing. Number one, whenever we talk about undue influence, the first thing that you need to focus on is relationship between parties. Okay. And why am I saying so? Because let's say you're walking on the street, okay, and there's a shopkeeper who is trying to sell you something. Let's say he's selling samosas, and he tells you that please purchase my samosa. It is very good, top quality, best in the country, and all of that. Will you get influenced? You may or you may not be. Okay, does it fall under undue influence? We will understand that this is not undue influence. Why? Because there is no relationship between you and that samosa wala. And what do I mean by relationship? And why is relationship important? Before we answer that question, let's look at another example. Let's say you force your father that if you don't buy me an iPhone, I will not eat food. Are you trying to influence your father? The answer is yes. Okay, and will your father agree to your request? He may or he may not. Most likely he will. And why will he agree to your request? Because you are his son. There is a relationship between you and your father. So influence works best when there is a relationship. If I try to tell you something, that may work because you are my student, okay, and I'm your teacher. So there's a relationship between the two of us. When you go to a doctor and the doctor gives you medicine, you take that medicine without asking any questions. Why? Because there is a relationship between you and the doctor. Okay, so first thing in undue influence is that there is a relationship. Now there could be different kinds of relationships. You could say there is blood relationship, your father and you have a blood relationship. Next is fiduciary relationship. We will talk about this later. Fiduciary relationship is a relationship based on trust. Okay, you trust your teacher, therefore whatever your teacher tells you, you do that. Okay, you trust your doctor, whatever your doctor tells you, you do that. All right, so first step is to check the relationship. And relationship in what respect? Note this: when someone influences you in a manner that puts you at a disadvantage or that causes advantage to the person influencing you, that is when the influence becomes improper. This is the simple explanation of when does influence become improper. Or in other words, you can say that whenever there is a person, okay, who has power over you, tries to influence you with the objective of causing any loss or disadvantage to you or an advantage to that person, that is when the influence becomes improper, and therefore undue influence. Okay, and we talked about this thing, who can influence you. Not, you will not be influenced by anybody, anyone and everyone. Okay, you can be influenced only by a certain set of people. And who are these people? With whom you share some kind of relationship. And why would you get influenced by them? Because they have either power, control, or authority over you. Okay, your father has authority over you. Whatever he says, you will have to listen. Let's say you want to become a cricketer, but your father says, no, you have to become a lawyer, you have to clear CLAT. You will have to listen to him. Okay, more often than not, because he has authority over you. All right. So anybody who is in a position to dominate the will or mind of another person is capable of influencing that person. Correct? If I tell you, let's say that NLS is the best college in the country. Let's assuming NLS is not the best, but if I tell you NLS Bangalore is the best college in the country, and I tell you this in a very convincing manner, can it influence your mind? The answer is yes, it can, because I'm your teacher. You trust me. There is a relationship between the two of us. Okay, and I have power and control over you as a student. Okay, and as your teacher. So therefore, in undue influence, the first step, as I said, is to check the relationship. What kind of relationship? Relationship such that the person who is influencing the other party is in a position to dominate the will of that other party. Okay, and if you just remember the example of doctor, patient, teacher, student, father, son. Okay, now these are a few kinds of relationships that you can remember. As I said, doctor, patient, teacher, student, parent, child, lawyer, client. Okay, and before I was telling you this, the concept of fiduciary relationship. Fiduciary relationship is based on trust. So again, let's revisit the doctor example. You go to a doctor's clinic, the doctor gives you an injection. Do you ever ask the doctor that, okay, what is there in this injection? What are the contents? You mean, as in, you never know. There may be poison in the as in the liquid that goes inside the injection. There may be poison in that. How would you know? And you never ask also. Why? Because you trust your doctor. So there is a fiduciary relationship between you and the doctor. Similarly, let's say you have committed a crime and you want to be defended by a lawyer. You go and tell everything to the lawyer, right? That this is what I have done and I want you to defend me. Why do you tell your lawyer everything? Because you trust your lawyer. There is a fiduciary relationship between the lawyer and the client. All right. So let's summarize. Undue influence happens when one person is in a dominant position. Okay, dominant position. Whenever if you get confused by the term dominant position, just think like this, that party has control, power, or authority over you. Okay, and the word used is and. Please note, just because somebody is in a dominant position does not mean that there is undue influence. That person should also misuse that position. Okay, so if I'm your teacher, let's say you come to my coaching center and you study there. You have paid your fees for the entire year, but I tell you that look, you have an iPhone and I need your iPhone. If you don't give me your iPhone, I will not pay attention towards you. Okay, I will teach the entire class, that I have to, because I've taken money from everybody, but I will not give personal attention to you, which I used to give before. Okay, What will you do in this scenario? Now, the first thing is that you know that I am in a dominant position because I'm your teacher, correct? And you don't have any choice. You want personal attention from me. And therefore you say that, okay, let me give the iPhone to this teacher. I will purchase another iPhone when I go to law school. You did not want to give me your iPhone, but since I am in a dominant position and I've tried to influence your mind in an improper manner. Why improper? Because I've misused my position. Correct? And what is the effect of this? It has caused disadvantage to you or advantage to me. All right. So remember this. These are the three things that you remember, and you will be able to solve each and every question on undue influence. Whenever you come across a question on undue influence, first thing that you need to check is whether one of the parties to the contract or the agreement is in a dominant position vis-a-vis the other. Okay, and how do you determine that? The first step is to check the relationship. Is there any relationship? Okay, is there any kind of relationship? It may not be blood relationship, it may not be fiduciary relationship, any kind of relationship which gives one party control over the mind of the other party. Okay, once you have established that, then the second step is to check whether the person who is in a position of dominance has that person misused his position. And if you find an answer in the positive, which means that you come to a conclusion that yes, position has been misused, then you look at the effect of this influence, undue influence, which is that what should be the effect? The effect should be that because of that influence, you have suffered a disadvantage, or you have been put at a disadvantage. Okay, and the other party has gained, or the other party has caused an advantage to himself. The party who influenced you, that party has benefited while you have suffered. Okay, so these are the three things that you need to check in undue influence. All right, now what is the effect of undue influence? Let's say if you have established that there is undue influence. All right, let's just revise it once more. Undue influence is whenever there's a question on undue influence, first thing that you need to check is dominant position, whether one party is in a position of dominance vis-a-vis the other. And to check dominant position, you would need to ascertain the relationship. Is there any kind of relationship? Is the relationship such that one party is in a position to control or dominate the mind of the other party? All right, so this is the first step. In any undue influence scenario that you come across, this is a must, that one party needs to be in a dominant position. All right. Now, if I were to ask you that, look, can coercion also be can some instances of coercion also be undue influence? For example, let's say if I put a gun at your head and I ask you to sign a piece of paper, some of you may wonder whether this is also a situation where I am in a dominant position. Assuming I'm not your teacher, let's say I'm a complete stranger. I put a gun at your head and I tell you to sign a document. You will sign, right? And you know that this is coercion. Question is it undue influence as well? The answer is no. Why not? Because there's a difference between coercion and undue influence. And what is that difference? Difference between coercion and undue influence. if you remember the examples of coercion, and now that you've understood undue influence, the first thing that should come to your mind is there is no use of force in undue influence. In undue influence, nobody is using physical force against you, which is most likely, which is more often the case with coercion. Okay. Now, this is something that you will always need to keep in mind. Second, undue influence will happen only when there is a relationship, because that is only when one party can dominate your mind or will. Okay, but for coercion, that's not important. Anybody can put a gun at your head and ask you to sign a piece of paper. So these are the two main differences that you need to keep in mind. Coercion, either there is a use of force or there is a threat to use force. Okay, but in undue influence, that's not the case. All right. And undue influence will happen only when there is a relationship between the two parties. Relationship of a kind where one party is in a position to dominate the will of the other party. Second, misuse. Misuse of the position. One is dominant. First was dominant position. Second was misuse of the position. The party who is dominant has misused his position. And the effect should be that it should cause disadvantage to, one second, hold on. Sorry, there was a network glitch. The effect should be that it causes disadvantage to the party who has been influenced or advantage to the party who is in a dominant position. So these are the three things that need to be satisfied in order to constitute undue influence. And the next question is, what happens when there is undue influence? So in coercion, we saw that whenever there is coercion, the agreement becomes voidable. Okay, voidable means it is the discretion of the relevant party who has the option of either proceeding with the agreement or cancelling that agreement. So whenever you come across the term voidable, keep this in mind, that the law has empowered one party. It may happen that the law could empower two parties also, both the parties. But for your easier understanding, just remember that whenever an agreement becomes voidable, the relevant party who the law gives the authority has the power to either enforce the agreement, or which means to proceed with the agreement, or to cancel the agreement. All right. So the effect of undue influence is the same. Whenever there is undue influence, the party who has been unduly influenced has the right or authority to either accept the agreement. That party has a choice whether he wants to proceed with the agreement or he wants to cancel the agreement. Let's understand this with the help of an example. Let's say there's an old man who is 80 years old and he has a caretaker with him. That old man does not have anybody else in his family. Okay, and that old man cannot walk, cannot do anything. He is completely dependent on the caretaker. One day the caretaker wants to exploit the situation of the old man. So he goes to the old man with a piece of paper, and which is actually a sale deed, or in other words, a contract to, or a gift deed. Let's make it easier. It is a gift deed which says that the old man is transferring all his properties to the caretaker. The caretaker takes that paper to the old man and tells him that if you don't sign this agreement right now, then I will go away and you take care of yourself. Now, what choice does the old man have? The old man is completely dependent on the caretaker. Okay, and he knows that if the caretaker goes away, the old man will die. So in this scenario, the old man has no choice but to sign the agreement. Question is there undue influence in this scenario? Apply this test. Dominant position. Is the caretaker in a dominant position? The answer is yes. The caretaker is in a position where he can control the mind or will of the old man. Second, has he misused the position? The answer is again yes. He was supposed to act in the best interests of the old man. But what has he done? He has misused the position. And what is the effect of this misuse of position and this influence? It is that it has caused disadvantage to the old man. Okay, the old man is going to lose all his properties. And an advantage to the caretaker. The caretaker got properties that he should not have gotten. Okay, so this is a case of undue influence. Tomorrow, let's say the old man wants to cancel the agreement. Can he do so? The answer is yes, because as I said, if there is undue influence, the agreement becomes voidable. And voidable at whose option? Law says in case of undue influence, agreement is voidable at the option of the party who has been unduly influenced, okay, which in this case is the old man. So he has the option either to proceed with the agreement or to cancel with the agreement, or to cancel the agreement. Okay, so we have covered coercion and undue influence and free consent. Tomorrow we are going to look at the next element, which is fraud. Okay, until then, revise well and feel free to ask any questions. Thank you so much.